not? Anyone else know the monkeys? No? The only old one.
Everyone image.
Hey, with the monkeys. No one else wants to jump in? Okay, fine.
That's right. I love it.
Gotcha. Warms the belly.
Bullet's so good.
Welcome now to the Crank Revolution podcast, your source for cycling shenanigans. Listen now to our hosts, the purveyors of pedals, as we teach you more about cycling every single episode. So sit right back, pop a cold one, and enjoy our show.
All right, and welcome back, guys, to the third ever video podcast for Crank Revolution. We hope you're all doing well and safe. I'm Jeremy.
I'm TC.
I'm Greg.
I'm Merk over here.
And we are back for a brand new episode. The world has been changing very rapidly. So real quick, we're going to first cut to a little bit of news.
This is Greg from Crank Revolution with an important cycling update. There's a headwind.
Hey guys, Merk here from the Crank Revolution podcast. You know what? Nowadays, I don't leave the house on a bike ride without my trusty helmet and my neck gaiter.
When I go riding, I like to keep my options for how I'm going to be for the day. Because you don't know whether you want to go to a brewery, you're going to go for a gravel ride, or you're going to visit your niece or nephew. Always be prepared with your very own PPE. It's important, folks.
Remember, guys, it's really about cutting down airborne droplets from coughing and sneezing, and that's why they recommend you wear a mask. I use a neck gaiter. We just got in a bunch at the shop. Check your local bike shop. Hopefully they'll have one too. Stay safe, guys.
Keep riding, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you later.
How are you keeping safe?
So TC, it looks like you've been ahead of the curve forever. You've been wearing a buff now as long as I have known you.
I'm not
and that
right
is
now.
reality.
I've been wearing that for years, and it's so relevant now with kind of the face covering and general use that it's having right now.
Well, and in the news today, especially with Cicero and some other areas here in Illinois, they're actually now requiring that if you are out in public, you must wear a mask. So a buff has been a great option. I know, TC, did we get a bunch of them in just recently in the shop? We had a great reach out from Life Behind Bar Cycling who made sure we were hooked up so that you guys can get buffs. Now, if you're not in Illinois and you can't come to our bike shop, call your local bike shop if they are open, if they are essential. A neck buff is something that really, really works right now. So what we're going to do next, though, we want to give a huge shout out to Justin Schultz, who reached out to us on YouTube asking questions about mountain bikes.
Yeah.
So, Merk, why don't you read Justin's question real quick?
I can. Great video as usual. Possible topic. What place does the hardtail have in modern mountain biking? Personally, my hardtail is my everything bike. Road, cross-country, trail, gravel, yada, yada. I found the lockout fork and swapping tires allow me to have fun on any surface. That's a great question.
That is a good
is.
question.
Well, and the other question I think a lot of people have had and reached out to me is with all the new innovations they've made, like, for example, the Specialized Epic that has the brain system, are hardtails still relevant? Now, before TC definitely answers this, Greg, were you recently looking at a hardtail? You had a very strange reason you wanted a hardtail.
I want to get into mountain biking, and I was looking around at a couple different options. And at the end of the day, I just want to keep strapping bags to my bike and go camping with that. And so hardtails seem to be the choice for me just because of how rigid the frame is to be able to carry additional weight.
Well, and that's definitely true. I know that there are several other riders. TC, you've seen this. Was it Lael Wilcox or someone else had used it it was a frame specifically designed more for mountain biking to build into one of those adventure bikes.
We recently did that viewing party for Lael Wilcox.
I just want to ride video.
I just want to ride, most recent Tour Divide. And she was racing a Epic hardtail, so specialized carbon hardtail. And she actually did have the brain fork on there that whole event, which is, multi-day unsupported bike packing racing. Yeah, hardtails are still completely valid in this world. I do ride primarily full suspension at this point. That's because I can afford it, because I do have an Epic and a stump jumper, and I get to have the fuller squish. But I feel like everyone who in their first few years when they're getting into mountain biking really should start at the hardtail. It teaches you how to ride smoothly, how to ride fast, how to ride efficiently, without the added kind of cheating that full suspension provides. And
Is it
especially
the bucking action that helps teach you? Is every time you do something wrong,
yeah,
you can feel it?
The bike reminds you that the rear wheel wasn't where it was supposed to be, and you got to adjust your riding for that. It also teaches you how to pump through, which is a lot harder on a full suspension when you haven't kind of trained where that rear wheel is, where it's tracking through. Hardtails are totally a great option, especially here in the Midwest, where we're cross country riding, relatively low travel, 100, 120 mil for most folks out here. It's just the most efficient. It's a nice kind of rocket to just race around the trails that we have.
Now, do you feel, TC, with people like Lael Wilcox doing these Tour Divide and these adventure bikes, Greg's talked about putting on a group site and building an adventure bike for lots of panniers. Is there really a big advantage in your mind to go with that hardtail frame converted versus a traditional touring frame?
The greater clearance for tires that you're going to have for that hardtail frame is going to allow you to ride in more varied areas. Having that larger clearance as opposed to a touring bike where you'll be limited to about a 35, 38 millimeter tire. Here you can run 2.2, 2.3, much larger tire, a lot more tread, a lot more traction. And you can have the best of kind of both worlds where you carry that nice bike that's loaded up with everything, but then you can do some single track mountain biking. That's a lot of fun.
Now, Merk, what is your opinion of a hardtail now? I know that you said recently been finding frames all over the place, under your bed, everywhere. Where did that hardtail sit for you?
I still love the hardtail. As TC said, being in the Midwest, I've never traveled out of the Midwest with a mountain bike. So the hardtail for me is fantastic. And on top of it, that's what I grew up on. I grew up on the hardtail with the rigid fork, and talking about learning how to ride lines and all of that without even a suspension fork. Oh, it's fantastic. It shows you what you did wrong instantly.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things, though, that in my research and looking around was that hardtail is going to be perfect, as TC said, for our area where it's going to be mostly hard pack. Since we don't have a lot of roots in the area, we don't have a lot of rocky areas. We don't need that extra comfort, really, in the Chicagoland area of mountain biking, and then probably in the Midwest. But TC's the expert. He would know more than that.
Well, and that's the thing I would ask you, TC, is for someone like myself, I do not currently own a mountain bike. I've thought about the Chisel. I've thought about so many. Last year I almost bought a 27.5 plus bike just to be that weird stopgap between mountain and fat bike. But I've read recently in articles that the cross-country bike of choice, something you'd find typically for a hardtail, the Epic is stealing it. So with that full suspension, with that brain setup, why don't you explain what that brain setup is and how does that replace, or would you still ride a hardtail?
Specialized brain technology, which is the brainchild of Mike McAndrews, to my knowledge. He's one of the designers there. Basically, it's a system they've had for a number of years that is a compression damper, compression lockout that's kind of position sensitive. On a smooth trail, you're basically locked out. When it does get rocky and start to get a little up and down, then that suspension breaks free and you have that full travel. Now, as I ride my Epic, I have my brain shock, but I have it just fully open because I'm not really racing.
You don't weigh anything either. You weigh nothing.
Yeah, I paid for suspension, so I want it to actually work. I like how you talk to fork designers and well, why would you want a lockout? You bought a suspension fork. Why would you want to lock this out?
Which is fair when you look at the pricing between the two.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, if you wanted the lockout, buy a rigid fork. Boom, done.
So is that the thing, TC, you would say then, if you have the budget to buy something like an Epic, where would an Epic run? What's the ballpark price range?
So the Epic is the full suspension version. They also do the Epic hardtail, which is, always like to kind of draw the distinction there. The full suspension, you've got an alloy version starting at about $3,200 off the top of my head. And then, anywhere up from there. Carbon starts around $4,000, I believe. And it's not just about budget. It's about where you want to ride, how you want to ride, what you want to do with it. I recommend, everyone who's getting into mountain biking to start at a hardtail. One, cost is generally lower. But also it teaches you a lot more about what you're doing with the bike, what inputs you're putting in, and how to kind of coach you along into getting to become a faster, better, stronger mountain biker.
But if you wanted to get into just a hardtail in that $1,000 range, then a hardtail is perfectly acceptable.
Absolutely. No, it's a great place to start and kind of get your feet wet and kind of start exploring what the mountain bike world has.
Now, actually, you just recently did that with one of our friends from our group ride page. Gordon came out with you and had a great time.
Yeah. And so, Gordon picked up a Epic hardtail in the shop here. And then actually literally the next day, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go to Raceway. You want to go? Rid every trail in there. And he crashed once or twice.
Hi, I'm Gordon Gest. I'm a musician and educator based in Chicago, Illinois. I perform with the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra, Rockford Symphony Orchestra, and the DePaul University Wind Symphony and Jazz Ensemble. And I currently teach at the Music Institute of Chicago, DePaul University, and District 211 in the northwest suburbs of Chicago.
So now we've got Gordon Gest on the show. How you doing, Gordon?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. So you are a professional musician and you also teach music. I heard this morning on NPR that it's a very hard industry to be in right now.
It's a little tough. Yeah. A lot of new formats and, new curriculum being developed given the situation. And, teaching an instrument remotely is a unique challenge, but we're making it happen.
Well, it's hard, and that's the thing everyone's saying is they're doing music lessons via Zoom and stuff. But since you're in a Chicago apartment, I can imagine your neighbors aren't going to love that. What do you play, by the way?
I play woodwinds, but I'm a primarily saxophone player. But I play all four voices of saxophone, clarinet, bass clarinet, flute, some oboe, and recreationally electric bass, because why not?
Something that's always been interesting to me is how people get back and find cycling again. Like, I loved cycling as a kid. Did you ride a bike a lot as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I rode recreationally, as we all do when we're 8 to 15 years old. And then at one point in my life, I was pretty overweight. I was pushing 300 pounds, and I sort of turned to cycling as a way to help me lose weight at that time, because it's low impact, and like when you're that size, jogging isn't great for you. I had gotten into cycling in that capacity and done it for a little while, helped me lose some weight, get in shape. And then, I went away to school, undergrad, grad school. I was overseas for a few years doing a degree there. And so I didn't really have much of an opportunity to cycle aside from like having a fixie that I rode around campus. And I think I owned 3 and they all got stolen.
So what brought you back out to it, though? Because you've gotten into it really heavy. How many bikes are in your stable now? I see at least 2.
Yeah, well, I've got my Tarmac on the trainer behind me, and I've got an Epic hardtail hanging on the wall. And then downstairs is my commuter / gravel bike. Well, actually, no, that's at the shop right now. But I have an aluminum diverge, alloy diverge, that I use as I said, gravel bike and commuter. And I came back to it almost for the same reasons I got into it in the first place, which was for fitness and health. And I do in the off season a lot of weight training. I've been a personal trainer at times in the past, and I sort of use the off season as a big strength training period. And as far as that discipline goes, you're either getting bigger and stronger or you're not. And so you gain weight over the winter. That's the goal. And then come spring, summer, you want to like not hate yourself when you look in the mirror. So you start to cut weight. And usually, that's done primarily with diet and
right.
You put some cardio in, but it's mostly diet. Diet's not fun.
No.
So I figured I would add in a little extra cardio and get myself outside and seeing things a little bit more. And I remembered, I enjoyed cycling.
From a workout standpoint, the one that always gets me is when you're cycling and you're in that zone in the same cadence at the same power output. You can do that for hours and hours. But what surprises me is I can go out and ride for 8 hours on a road bike, going on like a tour or on a long group ride. And then the second you get out and you mountain bike for 2-3 hours, you find muscles in your butt you've never had before because you're up swinging around. You're never at the same cadence, especially with the one-by systems. You're always speeding up, slowing down, ramping, braking. For me, it's a much more exhaustive workout.
Yeah, it's more like an interval workout. And it's definitely, briefer, higher intensity sort of intervals of power output. It really is kind of like an interval thing. There's also just the, like I said, the adrenaline aspect of it. You come around one of these berms and like, you just feel bad, like you're just like, yeah, I shredded that.
Have you backed down on any things you've seen yet, or you still go to the wall for it?
There was one. And when I was out with TC, he's a very experienced mountain rider. And he was just far enough ahead of me on the trail that I could hear when he was using his brakes or not. If I hear him hitting the brakes, then I knew something was coming. But there was one moment where I caught up, I was about 20, 30 feet behind him, and we come around this berm, and then there's a feature with a pretty good jump off of like a rock late in the trail, and then a good sized drop. So like if you're going to come off that feature, you got to get like nose down, like make that landing on the drop.
Yeah.
And I saw him go off of that and just disappear. And I was like, nope, I'm going to go around that one.
A lot of people say to me, I have a hard time finding time to go out and do things like cycling. How do you fit your exercise into your life?
I'm a big believer in balance in all things. And there are certainly diminishing returns, I think, to really any pursuit. And there's always kind of a sweet spot where you can get a lot done without going overboard in terms of time. And for me as a cyclist, particularly right now, I find that if I do an hour of interval training indoor, that has a ton of benefit. And, that carries over onto the road in a big way. I always feel like quantitatively better when I hit the road afterwards.
So now that you've got several different bikes, what is your favorite thing about mountain biking?
Probably my favorite thing about mountain biking is it's a very focused activity. You have to be paying very close attention. You have to be looking ahead. You have to be aware of your body position, your balance. You have to prepare for climbs, keep your head on a swivel. And there's so much technique involved that you're really just super engaged the whole time. And it's to me, a very intense experience and really gratifying. And you feel really accomplished to kind of navigate a tough section or hit a tough climb and kind of feel like, woof, made it through that.
What's been your favorite road bike memory so far?
Possibly number one, completing the North Shore Century. From just the aspect of like being out there with a group and kind of doing this whole ride together and just getting to spend a lot of time with my friends in the group and have some good conversations and just get out there and ride and see so much of the Chicago North Shore. That would be really high on the list. Probably one of the other ones for me would be, I think, paradoxically, my first group ride with Crank Rev, which I completely bonked on, like 10 miles in, and burned all my matches immediately and had no idea about pacing, and fell off the back of what I thought was going to be B group, but was actually like the tail end of A. And, that's not a no drop group. Like by all rights, I should have just caught B and then made my way back. But one of the A group riders hung back with me and rode with me all the way back to the shop and gave me quite a lot of pulls, into the wind, and really gave me a very warm welcome to the group ride experience.
So a big part of your journey started also with weight loss. That was a big one for me. For someone who perhaps wants to get back in and really do this for exercise and weight loss, what advice would you give them that you learned from getting started again and getting back into that flow?
I think there's a lot of value in going to it with a very narrow set, type of knowledge. If we know too much, we can really easily compare ourselves to people that are very good at what we're doing. And again, this is touching on my career as a musician as well, to have students that have a really good base of information and field of reference for really great performers. To compare themselves to that can sometimes be discouraging. It provides a great model, but if you're using that as a basis to compare yourself, and it can not always be helpful. And in a certain way, for a lot of my students, and in terms of weight loss with cycling, the basic idea at the outset is just ride your bike, just play your instrument, just play your saxophone, just ride your bike. Don't worry about is my cadence 95 RPM? Don't worry about, am I doing 240 miles a week, right? Just say I'm going to ride my bike 4 times this week. A lot of times it's the getting the bike down. It's the putting the chamois on, it's strapping on the helmet. That's the hard part. The hardest step is just doing the thing. And so my advice for really anyone that's on any of these journeys is, if there's a thing you want to do, just start doing the thing. And for a while, don't worry about comparisons to anybody else, and just find something about it that you enjoy and that keeps you coming back to it.
All right, Gordon, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. We wish you happiness and health and hanging out there in Chicago during these crazy times.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, it's Merk again with another Tales of Triumph and Woe. This time, I'm going to have a history lesson about my favorite classic of all time. Oh yes, the Queen of the Classics, the Hell of the North. It's also called the Easter Race at times. Yes, Paris Roubaix. Oh, just such a fantastic race. Started way back in 1896 by two gentlemen that owned the textile factory of Roubaix, along with Le Velo, which was the daily sporting newspaper. It was first raced on April 17th, 1896 between the two cities, so Paris to Roubaix, ending in the Velodrome in Roubaix. It has been held every year since then, as close to Easter Sunday as possible. A lot of times it is on Easter Sunday, hence the name Easter Race. It's 117 editions within the 124 years that it raced. Now, it's only missed races during both World Wars. 7 races have been missed because of that. As also this year, the race has been postponed due to what's going on currently in the world. Now, kind of a cool story, the Hell of the North did come from after World War I, that nickname, as the organizers decided to take a ride on the course to check what happened during the war because of all the bombing and so on and so forth. Everything was pristine until they finally wound up getting closer to the northern end of the race, and they wrote back to the organizers saying, "We have found hell, and it is in the north of France." Hence the nickname, the Hell of the North. Now, the race has always been run on the cobbled roads between these two cities every year. Now, lately, the most current editions, they don't always have full-on 100% cobbled roads, because the towns did decide that they had to pave over the roads to make them look progressive to the viewing audiences. Now, they've had to search out these cobbled sections all the time. Now, all the cobble sections nowadays have been closed off to road traffic, and nobody touches them unless they're doing repair work on them. Now, there is the famous section called the Trench of Arenberg, which is, if you've ever seen images of Paris Roubaix, you've probably seen images of this section. It is a 2.4 kilometer section of just the worst cobbles probably ever. There has been nasty crashes. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite classics rider, Johan Museo, crashed horribly on this and almost lost his leg because of gangrene. Well, this race is just a classic, and most of the images, again, you'll see are just of mud-caked riders, so on and so forth. It is not a Paris Roubaix unless, of course, it's raining. Now, Sean Kelly, one of the winners, has been quoted saying, "A Paris Roubaix without rain is not a true Paris Roubaix." Throw in a little snow as well. It's not serious. That's what people expect on Roubaix. Now, most of the riders prefer a nice dry race. That way they can race really fast and get it done with. Now, besides Sean Kelly, there has been many winners, of course, but Sean Kelly has won 2 of them, with many other riders winning 2. Now, the most races won by one rider is 4, and that's held by Tom Bonin and also Roger de Vlaeminck. Now, Roger de Vlaeminck is one of the main rivals during these classics of Eddie Merck, and they flip-flop back and forth. Now, Roger de Vlaeminck has done more wins on Roubaix than Eddie, but Eddie has won 3 of them. Still my favorite rider ever. Along with Eddie Merck, Fabien Cancellara has also won 3 of them. Now, Sean Kelly has been quoted also by saying, "Paris Roubaix is the most terrible race to ride, but the most beautiful race to win." And I agree with them. Back in the day, that would be the race that I would be always after. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this history lesson. Keep searching, keep riding, and have some fun. See ya.
Oh, my friends, that has been another episode of the Crank Revolution podcast. First thing we'd like to say is thank you. Thanks for being our listeners and sharing the show with your friends. Leave us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. We love the feedback. You can reach out to us by email at crankrevolutioncycling@gmail.com and find us on Facebook at Crank Revolution.